So Erik, welcome to the Automation Solution Podcast. We're really glad to have you on as a guest today.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this and, glad to spend some time with your listeners and see what we might be able to glean today.
No, that's great. What I'd like to do just to kind of kick things off is really let's go back, way pre plus one robotics and talk about just your history and your professional history. And I'd like to learn a little bit more about what got you into the business and where you've been in the past, and we'll lead up to the whole formation of the plus one idea, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, glad to. Listen, I worked my way through college in a cement mixer factory in Minnesota, right? I carried around an electric grinder grinding down welds before the cement mixer drum went into paint. And, one day the foreman rolls up in his cart and he's like, "Hey, Erik, I hear you know something about computers." And I'm like, I don't know what this guy's got in mind, but it's got to be better than me holding this grinder all day.
Absolutely.
And it turned out they bought an arc welding robot from GE of all people. It was actually a private labeled, Hitachi robot back in the early 80s. And they're like, "Look, we got this machine. Nobody knows how to make it run." Well, I sat down with the manual for an afternoon and I'm like, okay, I can figure this out. And I got it to run. Well, then I was, hunky-dory the rest of the summer, right? I mean, I'd load some parts and hit a green button and I'd sit down for 15 minutes and I'm like, robots rule. This is all right. I ended up, going to work for Yaskawa, Moto Man at the time, that put those robots in at that plant. And so I went to Moto Man in 1991, Craig, and I stayed there for 25 years.
Wow, that's fantastic.
You do a lot of different things in that length of time. So, right. I went there to stand up their training department. They were more interested in the fact that, I had taught high school physics than, I knew anything about robots. So, did some training. I actually went to Mexico and established a subsidiary there, which was basically a master class in justifying automation in a low cost environment, right?
Gotcha.
Which was what warehouse automation was for a long time.
Right.
Not so much anymore with everybody's, wages rising. And then, the last number of years I was there, I was responsible for the R&D group. And in that role is where, my job was to go find out, where should robots play next? And if there's such a great idea, why aren't there 1,000 of them a year going there today?
Right.
Effectively, what are the technology gaps holding us back? And when you do that, you figure out pretty quickly that supply chain is the next major vertical to adopt industrial automation at scale.
Right.
Because it has the right sort of combination of volume and value. And so within the context of Yaskawa, we tried to, move into these applications. But, it's a big company.
Sure.
It's a long history. It's hard to turn a ship like that. And so ultimately we left on very good terms. And I started Plus One with, Paul and Sean, the co-founders, to bring industrial automation to bear in the warehouse.
So take me back, Erik. And this is where I'm fascinated. So sorry to interrupt you, but I love the stories of entrepreneurs that the moment that they have that spark or that idea that keeps them up at night, gets them up early in the morning, it lights the fire in their belly to drive them forward. Do you remember the moment where you said, "You know what? I've got this idea and we're gonna do everything we can to make it work," and where you decided to go all in? Do you remember that moment?
I do, and it's in the name of the company, right? There's a reason we're called Plus One Robotics. And that is, as long as I've been delivering robots into the field, the robots had to do the same thing, or at least some family of things, over and over again. And, you would walk by a half a dozen what seemed to me good applications for robots to get to the
Right.
one in the back. And I'd be like, what about these? And they were like,
Right.
that one we'd like to automate it, but every once in a while it has this wrinkle. Or every once in a while, the incoming materials don't hold up to the same, standards. So,
Sure.
it's better if we just do these things by hand. So it was like almost automatable.
Right.
And I'm like, man, if we could just have the robot do most of the work then and ask for help from a person when it needed it, wouldn't we unlock so many more applications for this technology? And man, that's what's driven me ever since, is this notion of human robot collaboration. And I don't mean safe operation. I don't mean a cobot. What I mean is more than that. It's, sort of the cognitive piece here. It's when the robot says, hey, I'm out. I got no idea what to do next. Can you help me? And a person step in some seamless way to do that. So that's why the company's called Plus One, because you build this network of robots out in the field. You let them do what they can of their own volition most of the time. And then every once in a while, a robot raises its hand and says, I need help. And they get it from a human being. Plus one. You add one human being to the control loop and just watch how much more effective the entire network becomes. That is the passion that drives us here.
I love it. I love it. So, back to the beginning, obviously you've got this brilliant idea, which I think is brilliant. I've walked past, just like you've talked about, dozens of opportunities where the customer says, oh man, we're close, but not yet. Let's keep going to the one we know that we need help on. And so it's brilliant. And I know you guys have been working really hard, building an amazing team. We've gotten to know most of your team very well.
Mm-hmm.
How far along are you? Talk a little bit about the beginning of Plus One, where you are today, and where you see yourself in the next 5 years.
Yeah. So, we launched the company in the fall of 2016, and we took our first round of other people's money in the spring of 2017. And that's effectively when we launched the company proper, when people started drawing a paycheck. And that was in the spring of 2017. There were 5 of us at that time.
Okay.
Fast forward, 5 years going on 6, we're 73, 74 people. The majority of them are here in San Antonio. We do have a facility in Boulder, Colorado. We do a lot of, developers, R&D work out of Boulder. We have a subsidiary in the Netherlands. There's a lot of warehouses in Western Europe, more than there are in North America. So it's an important market for us as well. So from a sort of commercial scale perspective, big changes in the last, 5 years. Our customers. So we have, our customers are all, Fortune 100, certainly Fortune 200 users that need to bring automation tools to bear as they look at labor constraints, labor insecurity, managing the growth of their business, all of that. So we're fortunate to have some of the biggest names in the space as our clients. Clearly, not all of them are public about the work they do with us. Gratefully, FedEx is, and so we can speak more about the particulars there. But the company has grown considerably. We started out couch surfing, kind of a co-working space, industrial co-working kind of thing. Today we're 25,000 square feet here in Texas, and more in Europe, and it's been a substantial growth trajectory, and there's a lot more ahead of us in 2022.
That's great. So there's a statement that I'm going to read that I pulled from your website on your About Us page that I love, and this is where I think I want the listeners to really pay attention to this, and then we can talk a little bit more about where you see Plus One bringing value going forward. It says Plus One Robotics makes vision software for logistics robots, We give robots the eye-hand coordination to pick and place objects in the warehouses and distribution centers using 3D and AI-powered perception, so robots get smarter over time. Our award-winning approach to customer service includes remote robot supervision, so one human worker can manage up to 50 robots from anywhere. Robots work, people rule.
Yeah.
And I love it because it's concise. It really just says exactly what you're doing. Can you expand on that for the listeners?
Sure. So I'll start from the end. Robots work, people rule. You'll see that anywhere Plus One talks is, hashtag robots work, people rule, because that's how we approach the problem, right? This whole notion of what the sort of academics would call supervised autonomy. Let the equipment do what it can most of the time, ask for help when it needs it. Supervised autonomy is not new. It's just new to the warehouse automation space. Anytime you're flying across the country, it's an exercise in supervised autonomy, right? You had the pilot get you to cruising altitude, they flipped the switch to autopilot, and then they flipped the switch back down on approach. It was supervised autonomy. So we're bringing it to this space. But when you're in a warehouse, the warehouse is predicated on variability, not repeatability. Right? If we were back in the factory, we would know what we're looking for, right? And we would, once we had it, we know what we would do with it. But the supply chain is predicated on variability. I don't know what order is going to come down the line next. I sure don't know what it's going to look like next week when it's in its new seasonal packaging. So the warehouse is a 3D perception problem. Frankly, Craig, this is why I had to leave Yaskawa to make it happen, because robot manufacturers are there about the arm. Well, that's only 1/3 of the problem here. You have eyes, arm, and hand. All three of them need to come together to affect work in a variable environment. And so, in our software, in our products, we basically have two things. One is that 3D AI vision software. That's pick one.
Right.
Pick one's whole life is to look at a mess and take one at a time out of it, right? To make order out of seemingly, chaos. Right. So the pick one vision system is 3D, cameras looking at the scene, segmenting everything that's in the field of view, and making a determination, which one should I go pick up next? And I'll tell you, there's a whole layer of heuristics associated with that decision, because it may not always be the one that's on the top or the one that's closest. There are other things that come to bear. But once the pick one vision system has said, that's the one to go get, we command the robot that pose, that, commanded 6-axis position. The robot goes, gets it, puts it on the outbound. We're still not done, because what the customer wants from us is assurance that we have done one at a time. So we have a second camera. We're our own closed loop system. That second camera looks at what we placed and ensures there is one at a time, and that it's in the correct orientation for the downstream process. And that's what, goes on. That's the measure of success for us. One at a time, barcode up in the correct orientation, we're all good.
Awesome. But
the yonder piece is the other product then, that it's encapsulated, which is not all users require the human in the loop. Because some users, their picking universe is constrained. They only have 2,000, 5,000 different things they pick. Well, our AI is good enough to do all of that.
Right.
Whole cloth. But what if it's 800,000? You can't keep up.
Right.
So that's when the human in the loop comes into effect. And so when the robot needs help, it has a way to get it. And that's yonder.
Yeah, explain that. Explain yonder to the listeners, please.
Yep. So yonder is this, you can think of it as a managed service. So the robot says, hey, I need help. And we'll use the example of FedEx. Robot's in Memphis, and it's picking and placing, and it's doing that, however many times a minute. And then a big glut of parcels shows up at once, and the vision system says, I can't tell heads from tails here.
Right.
When it does that, it signals a crew chief. The crew chief's important. The crew chief are the people here at Plus One in Texas that, receive the alert from the robots in the field. When that happens, the crew chief looks up and they see an image of exactly what that robot is dealing with at that moment. It's not a streaming, camera feed. It's a snapshot that the robot sent us. And it says, can you help me make sense of this?
How fast is this happening, Erik?
So from the time a robot in Memphis says, cries uncle, till the time it is running again, is always under 6 seconds.
Wow.
The truth is the people working next to this robot don't even know it happened.
Right.
So we spent a lot of our engineering resource here at Plus One making this cloud connection very tight, right? You need it to be tight because you need the responsiveness. You don't want a lot of latency here. And second, you need the economy. You can't be loading up your cloud with a whole bunch of data because it gets expensive for the user.
Sure.
Right? So we take all of that, into account. And so Yonder is this, human in the loop service powered by the vision. What does the system learn as a result of these human crew chief interventions is those exceptions, those edge cases are by far the highest value data pieces you can get. The rest of it is steady state. These are the ones you really want to focus on. And these are the ones that the crew chiefs get. So the crew chief, anytime we get an exception that the crew chief has to handle, that feeds ultimately our AI, right? We have a curation step where we go through those instances and we go, yep, the robot should have done this. Yep, the robot should have done that. Ooh, we don't want the robot to do anything with this scene because what it was is a package blew open. We don't want it to learn from that. Okay, so you have this curation step so that you are feeding the robot, in fact, those instances that'll make the AI better.
Oh, love it.
Yep.
So and now obviously you've got years under your belt now. So over time, and let's talk FedEx since we're on that company, as the robot learns, the AI gets better and better. Have you been able to measure the need for the human intervention? Do you see that going down over time? What have you learned so far?
You do, and what you learn is this is not a perpetual slide to zero. Okay.
Right.
First off, zero's never happening. That you will always have something new that the robot's going to experience that it's not ever experienced before. So zero isn't happening. But what you see, and I'll give you a different example. One of our customers that uses us for each picking, order fulfillment. Right? They have lots and lots of different SKUs, so their level of intervention is necessarily going to be higher. The crew chief gets called, does its thing, and the AI updates mean the crew chief intervention comes down. Then they introduce a whole new spate of SKUs, or, and this is not unusual, same SKU, different packaging.
Yeah.
Right. And then the robot says, starts asking more often again. And so it's not, this nice gradual decline. It is a little bit stair-steppy as you, go through that. But to the warehouse operator, it's seamless and they don't even know it's happening, right? At the end of the day, they don't want to know about the sausage making. They care about two things. Did I get the volume through the building? Did I hit my cutoff times?
Yeah.
And having that human in the loop deal with those exceptions, whichever exceptions they are, and however often they might be, is what allows them to be operationally dependent on the robot to meet their performance objectives of volume and throughput.
And the beautiful thing as I'm thinking through this, Erik, is that the flexibility you're giving your customer, it's who cares if they change packages or they bring on, a new customer internally. So they've got new SKUs they got to move through because they know the system's gonna be able to handle it.
And it also means that it gives them, the end user, real confidence in a vertical launch, right? Our system shows up on the floor today, it's going to pick today.
Right.
And it may not pick everything, it might pick 80%. But those other 20% might go to a crew chief. The system's going to keep running.
Sure.
And tomorrow it's going to be better than 80%. So, this was sort of the impetus for our QDK. And I would, encourage your listeners to go to plus1robotics.com. You can look at the QDK and the RDS, the quick deployment kit. And that's what it is. It's a pre-engineered system with a robot arm, with the gripper and vision system. Drop it on your floor, put power and Ethernet to it, and you know that it's going to pick today and get better at picking tomorrow.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now the human intervention, it's 24/7, 365. How does that all work? Okay.
Absolutely. So our customers depend on us. So we are 24/7 redundant crew chief support, and there has never been an escalation that's gotten to me. Okay.
That's great.
The crew chiefs take care of things. If they can't take care of things, they know where their first line of defense is. But we have a singular focus on having no timeouts at an end user. When the robot asks for help, it had better get it in its time, right?
Right.
Because that's what the SLA is built around.
Right. No, that's fantastic. So when you look through what we've been, these last couple of years, obviously, Erik, difficult pandemic, world's upside down. What is that? How has that played into Plus One's deployment? Is it, obviously there's a greater need now you're seeing as warehouses and more products being shipped to the consumer's home. How has that affected your business?
Yeah, for sure. Warehouse automation, and we wouldn't have wished a pandemic on anyone,
right?
But clearly it's a boon for warehouse automation because twofold. One, we all needed e-commerce more.
Right.
Right. You just, how are we going to get your stuff? And second, just as all those, direct to consumer brands, and just as we become more dependent on them as the end users, as the consumers, is just when those same facilities have the least confidence in having the workforce be able to show up at their door.
Right.
So if the pandemic has done anything, it's, there's a lot of talk about labor scarcity, and that's been around. I mean, every warehouse in America has had a help wanted sign sitting out front for the last 5 years.
Right.
COVID didn't do that. There's always been labor scarcity in this space. But what changed is it became labor insecurity. All it takes is a governor or a mayor and a mandate, and just when you need the workers the most to get the orders filled, you have less of them able to come to work.
Right.
So it goes from being a operational hassle, churn and having to onboard people and train them up all the time and all of that. That's an operational hassle, to being a C-suite imperative because it's business continuity now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's that makes a lot of sense, and it's what we've seen. I think automation in general, it already had a lot of tailwinds, and I think the pandemic, if anything, has just shined a light on the need to be able to just continue to operate your business, based on the demand that the consumer is putting on it. And everyone's looking for ways to protect themselves. You talk a lot, on the website, everything is logistics, warehousing, that 3PL space. Do you see the product working inside of a true manufacturing environment?
Yeah. So if the manufacturing is about, 3D bin picking for loading a machine tool,
right?
Pretty common application in manufacturing.
Right.
Then I would argue plus one doesn't really bring you much value. Why? Because you know what you're looking for.
Right.
Right? That bin is all full of the same thing, and you just need to singulate them out one at a time and load your lathe or what have you. There's other technologies out there that do that work, and they're going to do it at a different price point than 3D vision for unstructured environments.
Sure.
So, but the notion of supervised autonomy clearly will play a role in manufacturing long term. Because you bring it full circle back to how we got started by walking by applications in manufacturing plants that should have been automated and were not. I have been, pretty relentless here at Plus One that we would not allow ourselves to be, and I don't want to use the word distracted because it makes it sound like manufacturing is in the pejorative.
Right.
But what it means is it is the warehouse that is going to be the crucible by which these technologies mature. We're going to do it in the context of the inbound dock door to the outbound dock door. But once those technologies are really robust, once human in the loop is at scale and all of those things, then clearly there would be applications for this same notion in manufacturing, context, in construction, in any number of applications where you're going to need human intervention once in a while.
Yeah, 100% agree. I do see that evolving, and we're seeing even some of our customers that have, maybe warehousing divisions, excuse me, and also do manufacturing. And so there's, and they love the human aspect of, this, just something that's different and it helps them. So I can see it over time getting there a little bit, and assisting some of these customers and bringing more value.
And I would say that every major manufacturing concern in America, right, all the big facilities have a distribution center under roof. They just don't ordinarily think of it that way. They think of it as inventory and work in process. But, that's a supply chain problem on the other side of the wall. So those sorts of applications, you would see Plus One participating in, even if the vertical were manufacturing, the application is in fact distribution and logistics.
Correct. No, that's good, Eric. It's been a lot of fun to watch you and your team here over the last several years as you kind of paved the way. And we look at you as for surely the industry leader in this space. And I know you've had a lot of success with some big brands and continue to have that success. So the listeners that we have, listening today or whenever they're kind of catching up with what Plus One does, how should they go about learning more, contacting Plus One? What kind of steps, what are you putting in place out there to service everybody?
Yeah. So certainly plus1robotics.com is a great place to start. It will take you to our YouTube channel, or you can just, search for Plus One Robotics on YouTube. We got a lot of videos out there with different applications, different customers, testimonials, use cases, all of that. The other is follow us on LinkedIn. We are very active on that platform. We try to use the platform for educational purposes. Right. And we'll tell you what we're working on, and we'll share our perspectives on, different technologies in the space, and such. So for sure. And MODEX is coming up. We will be at the MODEX show. You can, find our booth there. We will be demonstrating our technology live. We will in fact also be showing yonder remote from the MODEX show, so you can actually try to be your own crew chief.
Perfect.
When you come visit us. And then we are here in San Antonio, Texas. We have an entire customer experience center that, your colleagues were able to, come and see here last week. And it's a great proving ground, and we welcome anyone that wants to come see what we're about and see whether the technology is meaningful for them in their operations. Come take a look at Plus One here in San Antonio. Glad to host you.
We love it. That's great. I'm going to go ahead and in the show notes, I'll make sure that we put a link in there for your website, the LinkedIn, as well as Modex, so people that want to learn more about Modex and have a chance to hopefully make it and take a look at your booth. We'll do that. This is it's been a lot of fun, Erik. I've always wanted to learn more about your story. I think it's brilliant. You and your partners, what you guys have done, and the team you've built. We're excited to be a part of it, as a small piece of that, and continue to look forward to watching you bring value to the space, well into the future.
Well, thanks so much, Craig, for the opportunity. And you're right. We're expecting big things out of our partnership with RōBEX, and we'll go satisfy some clients, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much, Erik.
All right. Be well.